What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Peer Pleasure with Dewey Halpus on Equal Vision Records and Sound Talent Media. I am Dewey, your host with the most, bringing you more great content week after week. This week, we have Mr. Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage from Times of Grace. They just put out a new record. It's amazing. As always, we didn't talk about that new record on this podcast because we usually don't do that. We went all kinds of different places. We went some pretty deep spots. Jesse is a very, very intelligent person and a great conversationalist and super easy to talk to. So this one went really, really, really well. I had a blast talking to him, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I think we're going to do a part 2 here when the time is right. Not too soon, of course, but in the near future, we will have Jesse on for a part 2. I think you guys will enjoy this. But yeah, let's get some business out of the way and we'll jump in. So peerpleasurepodcast.com is the website. peerpleasurepod@gmail.com is the email if you want to get in touch with me. If you have guest ideas, questions, comments, anything like that, you can definitely go review and rate the show on Apple iTunes. I don't think Spotify has that option yet, but maybe they'll catch up eventually. But right now, Apple Podcasts is the place to go rate and review the show. Even if you don't listen to it there, go ahead and do that because that definitely helps us out with our algorithms and chart position and all that shit. So head over there and do that. Join the Facebook group, the Peer Pleasure Podcast Inner Circle Facebook group on Facebook. You can search it out in the top tab, and we'll let you in. It's a private group, but that's just to keep everyone's privacy together. We'll definitely let you in when you sign up there. And check out the premium service, which is peerpleasure.supportingcast.fm. That's where you get access to the video footage of the shows. You get access to the past cast, which is another podcast I'm doing with other podcasters talking about their favorite episodes of the show and doing a deep dive into that, how the episodes came to be, how the guests and I got connected, things like that. And then you also get the ad-free feed. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. That's peerpleasure.supportingcast.fm. So yeah, let's get into this one, guys. I'm super stoked for this episode to come out, and I've been waiting on it a little while because Jesse's done a ton of press, and I wanted to wait till the end of that to put this episode out so everyone wasn't inundated with all his episodes. But as always, this one's a little bit different, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So let's get into this episode with my conversation with Mr. Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage and Times of Grace. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. I'm just making sure I got everything rolling here.
No worries.
Dude, so you're a podcaster now too. This is rad.
Yeah, I am. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done. It's really enriched my life and made me like just a deeper person, I think. I love it. It's great.
Dude, that's awesome. And we just start this, dude. This just starts when we jump on here. So I always get the 20-minute mark. Hey, are we recording this? Yeah, we are.
That's the best. I love those types of conversations. It's like, that's what it is. It's a conversation. It's great.
Exactly, dude. I had I don't think you and I have ever actually met. I did an episode with Adam.
Oh, right.
2017 at the Roseland in Portland. You guys were with Anthrax.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a long time ago. It seems like a long time ago. Wow.
Yeah. He was super sick, and I could tell he didn't want to do it, which I was fine with. It happens every once in a while, but like, especially if it's set up through a publicist. But so I introduced him as Adam from The Price is Right. And he lost his mind, and it totally broke the ice. It was awesome. But I don't think
that's all you got to do, man. That's all you got to do is talk The Price is Right, and you're automatically in with him. It's fine.
But you and I didn't meet then either, because I was in and out for that one.
Yeah.
So it's good to meet you now. And the reason I bring that up too, that we haven't met yet, is I don't know a ton about you except music, right? Because there's not a ton of stuff there. As of lately, there's more. But my first real exposure to you and your personality was an interview you did with Keith from Every Time I Die for Revolver, that Flex Your Head deal you were doing.
Oh, yeah. Back in the day.
Yeah. As a podcaster, like, I watch people differently, and especially like face-to-face stuff. And the way that you handled yourself in that exchange, I was like, this guy has to be doing this. Like, it was, you just dug in the right amount. You were disarming. Like, it was a great conversation, and I was blown away by it. I was like, why is this like the first thing? Like, the first thing was episode 1 or whatever. I think you were saying And I was just blown away. I was like, this has to, like, you have to do this. So then when I saw Stoke the Fire, I was like, okay, perfect. Like, we're doing this now. Like,
thank you, man. Yeah, it's kind words. Something I really enjoy doing, but I'll tell you what, with having a partner like Matt that I do now, who is really like good at guiding the conversation, it allows me to be more of myself, and I can get a little more lost in the conversation, where if we've got talking points, which, you know, we just have a conversation as well. We don't really stick to, like, we're not trying to promote anything except for the well-being of humanity on that. So it's nice, but he definitely helps steer the conversation in a totally different way than I do. So we work really well together. I think on my own, I would get a little lost, but I appreciate the kind words.
Dude,
I love it, man. It's fun. It's really fun and interesting, and feels like I got a different type of a purpose with this as opposed to music, you know?
Absolutely. It's that one-on-one connection or two-on-one connection versus the first two rows you can see in the lights, you know?
Yeah, totally.
It's a different energy, but it can be just as fulfilling as a stadium full of people. Just two people going at it.
Yeah, it really has been, honestly. And then I think it really helped me get through this whole time frame. You know, we're only like going on like 4 months in, but when we had even just the idea of that being a possibility, turning into a reality, it gave me hope. It gave me like, oh, this is something I can work for, since music is just out the window right now. And now that I've dipped my toes, I feel like I'm going to be a lifer. I want to continue doing this forever. Like, I love it. I really love it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you connect with people in the same way in your personal life? Like, like when you would sit down, you know, on tour, we're professional time wasters. So like, you know, you sit down, have conversations at who else? I was talking to, Josh Rand from Stone Sour last night, and he was talking about how that's like the gateway, because you all this time to kill. So why not do something that dumbs down the mind and takes all those hours away? We were talking about his Xanax addiction, and I was like, that's exactly true. Like, you're so much downtime. You have an hour and a half of work, and then the rest of it is just killing time, getting something to eat, meeting who else is on the tour. But did you feel that you connected with people the same way, just in normal conversation outside of recording?
Every once in a while it happens. Whether that's late night on the bus with Joel and Adam, who we have our little 3 powwow when we actually have the lounge to ourselves. We go deep. On the whole, though, especially on the tour bus, there's not a whole bunch of depth going on there. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's a boys club, watching horror movies, watching sports, listening to reggae music, listening to punk rock. A lot of the depth that I find is away from everybody. I thoroughly enjoy escaping. I do it either on my bicycle or on foot on days off. I'll find myself at a bar somewhere talking to a stranger about their life and asking them questions as if I've been doing this for years. Just, I love to hear people's stories. Yeah. I want to know what this person's all about. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Or, you know, I would just get lost in either a video game or writing electronic music on my laptop. You know, that's pretty much my MO on tour. I really do enjoy the depth of conversation, but they're few and far in between, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys do a lot of editing on your podcast as far as the conversation? That's fantastic. I'm the same way.
I think you did one edit, but it was only because it was repeated and it was something that didn't need to be said again. And the episode was already like a really long one. So we just kind of chopped it up. But for the most part, no, we pride ourselves on not doing it. I think it's great when you don't edit, because we had Vinny Stigma on from Agnostic Front. He took 2 phone calls during the show, and we were in tears. It was hysterical. Some of the best moments are the moments that you just don't edit those out. Like, that's the good stuff, is the weird shit that goes on. It's so funny. I love it.
Dude, that's all. I'm the same way. I don't touch it unless someone asks me specifically to take it out. I don't touch it, because you can't, you know, you're like you say, you go to a bar on tour and you sit down next to a stranger, you have an hour-long conversation. You can't edit any of that. It happened. Like, why would you do the same thing here? You know, I had Danny Trejo on, the actor.
Oh yeah. I know who that is, man. I've seen all the horror movies.
He's a legend. He said this was over the phone though, but like, he's like, hold on a second, man. It's hot out here. I got to take my shirt off, man. So he takes his shirt off, and I'm like, okay, Danny Trejo's taking his shirt off on the show. And then hey man, I got to say hey to this pretty lady. Hold on a second. And I thought he knew her, but he just goes, hey, pretty lady. Literally. I left it all on there. His post is like, you can cut all that out. I was like, no, do I have to? He's like, well, no. I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave it in there. It was beautiful.
I love it. Yeah, it's magic. You can't mess with shit.
It's the personality.
I love that. What's up, pretty lady?
Hey, pretty lady. I was like, he doesn't know her. He's got his shirt off. He's like getting coffee or something, talking to a pretty lady. The only thing I can
imagine witnessing that. That's amazing.
Oh, dude, I wish I could. I wish it was like on a Zoom and he was carrying his phone with him, because it would have been priceless. But that's awesome. I'm stoked. You guys are the same way. I listened. I think the first episode I heard of the show was with Randy. I had just had Randy on as well, and you guys had an awesome conversation with him. He's fantastic. But
he is great. He's easy though. I mean, you just kind of let him go. You know, we just threw it there and you let him. He's one of those people. He doesn't need you to guide him, really.
Exactly.
So it's a great conversation, and then we have listeners on as well. So it's not just notable people, and some of those listener podcasts become some of the deeper ones. And it's definitely, I'll walk away with from some of those listener ones really contemplating stuff, like really thinking about life. Yeah, it's heavy. It can be really heavy, man. I love it.
Dude, that's 100% incredible. I was just listening to the van life dude you just did.
Oh, yeah.
Because I saw like listeners, I was like, that's genius. Like people, so like the biggest podcasts are like the NPR stuff where they're talking to people that aren't someone of note, but they're telling stories.
Yeah.
And I love that in your guys' platform, you're taking that on, like to talk to people that no one's ever heard of versus like, okay, let's get, Metallica or so, let's boost some numbers to go out there and get the real deal. I really respected that. And that's why I jumped into that episode. Cause I was like, wait, listeners, awesome. Okay. And that dude's super interesting. That's super, super well-spoken and a great storyteller.
Yeah. He was, right? Totally. Yeah. And that's the thing about it. You never know what you're going to get into. We never know. Like we do a quick little, not even an interview. Like they write an email, we read the email and we decide, okay, we're going to do this or not. And actually one guy, unfortunately, just passed. He was a guy we had named Bradley Hart. And he was talking about his addictions and his struggles and his wanting to be sober and be a musician and how he's been good and turned into sort of like a counselor for other people. And we just found out a few days ago that he passed. So we had developed this relationship with this guy, stayed connected with him online via our Stoke the Fire on Instagram. And he became friends with another guest in his own neighborhood that had the same story, similar story of trying to overcome addiction and being a musician. So they actually met and became friends, started a band. We're just starting to demo stuff. And
he passed.
It just shocked us. It shook us to our core. And if you go back and listen to that episode, he overdosed. Like, I can't even tell you how many times. I remember saying to him in the episode, wow, you're still here for a reason, bro. Like it was a really beautiful, deep conversation. And then finding that out yesterday morning, it took me all day to like just sit with it. It was like, wow, we're making these really incredible connections with people. And you kind of like develop a relationship with your audience. And to hear that was just like, number one, sad, but then number two made me realize how important I think what we're doing is, just to bring people together and let them tell their stories, let them be heard. I think people really just want to be heard. And it's a beautiful thing, especially nowadays with where we are, to be able to connect people and to make people realize we've got a lot in common, a lot more in common than we do differences. And we're living through an era and an age where differences are so highlighted and polarized and politicized. So for me, it just solidifies the fact that this kind of work is important. Just talking to people and allowing them to speak on their struggles in their life. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I'm sorry to hear about that, man. That's a tough one.
Super sad. Yeah. But, our hope is that story, and then we're eventually going to do like a little tribute to him, but our hope is like just to continue that conversation. So maybe that won't happen to the next person, Yeah. But so I digress emotionally, so I don't get all worked up, but it's a beautiful thing, really. world of podcasts can be incredible. And you mentioned NPR. The first podcast I ever got into was the Moth Radio Hour, which is just people telling stories. I still love it. It's so good. I love it. It's great.
Dude, did you ever listen to Coast to Coast?
I didn't. I know what you're talking about, but I know you're talking about, but I have not.
Okay. That's where I got hooked on just talk radio alone. Like my dad used to listen to Rush Limbaugh in the car, and I'd sit in the back seat and just like, so I got really familiar with his voice. I'm not a fan of his politics, but I got to know that voice, and you start to believe things when you listen to someone that long. That voice goes into your subconscious, and you start to have thoughts in that voice sometimes if you listen to it enough. That's why advertisers on podcasts are so relentless, because they know if they hear you say it, people will do it.
It's a familiar voice. It's someone that's part of your day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally see that. And I think that's what's interesting about it too. You know, your audience becomes they almost see you as a friend. And I can see that because I've done that I was even like that with Matt, my partner now in my podcast. He has his own podcast called Life in the Stocks, where he does great interviews with, you know, the who's who of whatever comedy. And I developed a sort of weird relationship where he felt like my friend, and then he became a good friend. It's weird. It is weird.
The weird thing too about and we could go on about podcasting forever, but like through this show, like I come from music, but a long time ago, like 2007, I stopped touring. Didn't do shows, didn't do anything, came back, wanted to do something creative. I was like, I started listening to some podcasts. I was like, I could do that probably if I could figure out how to record it. I started doing that. And it's funny that I've met more people in music through this than I ever did touring. I've gone more places because of the podcast than I did touring, like other countries and things like that, like for longer periods of time where you can actually do things. And then a lot of the people that I've had on that I never knew before, we still keep in touch weekly or monthly, like we'd known each other for 10 years. And it's from one conversation. It's the weirdest thing. It's beautiful.
And it actually gives me hope for my future, because I can't see myself touring forever. Like, I don't think I'm going to be one of those guys, you know, geriatric touring. I can't see it. So to me, that's another thing too, that this gives me hope for the future. And the fact that you even say you've traveled because of the podcast.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I would miss. I love traveling more than anything. But you're right. When you're on tour, either you're exhausted or you're busy, or just, you know, or a combination of the two. So to me, that sounds awesome. I'm happy for you, man. And I look forward to the day I can say the same thing if I ever stop doing what I'm doing,
dude,
you know, as far as touring goes.
It'll happen. You just fly out and do those podcasts in person where you can't normally get to people, or it's awesome. It's a blast, and I love it just like you do. And have you always been, though, like you were mentioning, you know, a lot about emotions and stuff, like have you always been a fairly emotional person?
Oh yeah, completely.
Like really deep in your head?
Yes, 100%. But I used to just mask it when I was younger, you know, put up that punk rock facade, like I'm tough, I got this, you know, and that eventually all came crumbling down. And the moment I started to be vulnerable, I found a lot of people relating to it. And then I found it eased a lot of my anxieties and helped me feel less alone. And then I saw it as a strength, like it's almost like a badge of pride to be vulnerable is strong, and it helps people. And then it in turn helps you. So now I'm outwardly wearing my emotions on my sleeve with pride. Like I don't care if people think I'm a big sap. I don't care. But when I was younger, I definitely was like, trying to be cool. Like I don't want to be not cool or tough. I don't give a shit about that anymore.
Dude, it makes me think about, like, and I talk about this a lot, but when we're children, like young children, we do everything the right way. Like we express them. If we're going to cry, we cry. If we're going to yell, we yell. If we're going to, you know, if we need to shit our pants, we shit our pants. But we also lift with our legs, right? Like we picked up, like watch my daughter get down and do something. She squats down. She doesn't kneel down. She doesn't bend over at the waist. She picks things up with her legs, lifts properly, like things you unlearn because of everyone around you trying to not be children, not be free.
Genuine.
Genuine, pure, not, you know, if you need to throw a tantrum, like, but we unlearn these things. And then later in life, we start to like crave them and get back to them, you know, like like you're saying, like going back and being outward with your emotions. Like, of course, to be cool, you're trying to hold them in. If we could just get this message to people in middle school and high school that, hey, you don't need to wait until you're 30 or 40 to do this. It would change so many lives. It would stop so many suicides. It would stop so many substance abuse problems. If you could just keep that little bit of integrity is the wrong word, but that little bit of pureness, like that you're born with.
Yes.
Like you're born a human being. You learn how to not be one. You learn how to be a drone.
And I get these urges and I follow them now. You know, I think of, I was out to dinner in an outside area over here where I live, and I saw these kids doing cartwheels. So I got up from the table, I looked at the people over there with me, and I'm like, I'm going to go do some cartwheels. And they're like, what? Yeah, right. And I did. And I was like, this is awesome. And there's moments like that where I do childlike things, and you know, my girlfriend loves me for it because I just don't care anymore. I do weird, dumb shit, and it makes me so happy. And then you see the people looking at you like, and you could tell they're like, they want to do it too. Just get up and do a cartwheel, knock it off. And an important thing that I learned too, because I had vocal surgery in 2018, and I had to rethink everything. I got the nodules cut off. I had to relearn how to speak. And one of the things that really struck me was, remember the doctor saying, you know, think about a child. Oh, actually, no, I think this was Melissa Cross, my vocal teacher, that said this. Think about a child. When they yell or they scream, they just do it. And they don't get hoarse. You don't hear a baby going, I can't do this anymore, because we were born screaming, yelling, and hollering properly.
Yeah.
And it's the brain and your self-consciousness that makes you change, and you manipulate your voice, and you go lower than you should because you're trying to sound manly, or like all these weird things that we do connected to everything you just said, that can apply to the voice as well. Anybody can yell and scream all day long and not get hoarse if you know how to do it properly. So that kind of blew my mind, and that mindset carried over into everything else. Like, just be a kid. You know, I see kids playing on the playground. What a beautiful, funny, innocent thing. You know, just like you see a kid going, la, 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 kicking the feet up and spinning in circles. And like, you think it's funny, but that's legitimately like what's going on in their head. And I love that. So I've been trying to do those types of things more, even if I look like a total madman. It's fun. Do it sometime. If you're listening to this and you have an urge to do something childlike, do it and enjoy what comes next.
Yeah.
It's so
because you watch, I mean, and even going back to the same thing with children, like if you don't have children, right?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm a proud uncle, and awesome. I like it.
So you've probably seen when it comes time for bed, and it's actually like game on bedtime. Like, you're not fighting to go to bed, but when a child lays their head on the pillow and is ready to go to sleep, they close their eyes like a puppy and they're asleep because they're not stressed. They're not worried about, their mind's not racing. They are just, I'm going to sleep now. It's that easy. Incredible. No insomnia, none of this stuff that we put into ourselves and make ourselves do. The anxiety can come out, of course, but during that early stage, like, it's just not there. Like, it's incredible. If it was that easy to hang on to it.
Yeah, I also think there's got to be something to do with being genuine and being honest. So there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to sort of mill over in your head. You know, if a kid pissed you on the playground, you don't even remember at that point. You're already in the zone. You've dealt with it. It's out of your system. You're right. That's profound, because I am totally that person that can't fall right to sleep. My thoughts catch up to me immediately. So, you know, I never used to do this. I never owned a TV until recently, but I would read books, you know, and that would put me to sleep, or you know, put on headphones, listen to music. And now it's nature programming. David Attenborough, you know, or a travel program, or Anthony Bourdain travel shows I've seen hundreds of times. Those are my lullabies. It's the only way I can fall asleep. If not, I'm like there, like thinking about what I got to do tomorrow, like all that stuff. Yeah. So I envy that. I envy that. Just now I'm going to sleep. That's not me.
Yeah. They don't get to, like, children don't get to go up on stage in front of a bunch of people and have a fucking blast either, though. So there are trade-offs to what we have to deal with. But like, you know, you don't see them on magazines or on, you know, other things. Like, there's definitely a trade-off and something that comes with being an adult. But I love that you do that. Like, get back into that childlike wonder. I had a nickname on tour, Man Child, because I'm 6'5", 380 pounds. Like, I'm not a small person. So like I actually ran into Scott Ian at that show when I was walking out of the green room in the Roseland in the basement there.
Yep.
Literally walked around the corner and like stopped him like a refrigerator. Like he was coming out of the room and you like, boom. Oh, I was like, sorry, Scott Ian, and just left. But like, so what I'm saying is I'm not a small man, but like when I do things like that with my kids or whatever, like people start staring because they're just like, what is going to happen? What's going to break? Like, but on tour, like it was that childlike wonder. Let's go play on this playground. Let's go do this. Like I always love that stuff, or I take it too far.
Yeah, no, I back that. I totally back that. It's funny too, because I'll do it sober and people are like, are you? I'm like, no, this is what I do every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing for me moving up here to the Catskill Mountains from New York City. Now I have my playground. So I do it all the time. I live right by a river. I skip stones. I jump all over the rocks. I do cannonballs into the water. This is a daily occurrence for me now. So now I'm allowed to sort of be that madman, because if you're around certain things like a river, people are like, oh yeah, that's what I would do too. I'd jump in the river and be a maniac. But the difference between me and my friends, I'll do it for the entire day. They'll do it for like an hour. Be like, all right, let's go drink some beers. I'm like, no, drink your beer here and let's continue playing. It's important shit.
I love that. So you moved to the Catskills, dude. So you're in nature, like you're out there, like in the wood. You're living in the woods.
I am in the woods. Yeah.
That's intense. I love that.
Going on a little over 2 years now. Yeah. If you walk out my front door, there's an open field that's protected land. You go down the street, there's a stream. Mm-hmm. You look out the window, there's mountains. And the beautiful thing is too, where we live in Woodstock, New York, is we have a little town to go to. We have restaurants and bars, and there's live music back over here. Out there's like a beer garden. So we have life down the street a ways. And then we live right on the border of a village called Bearsville. And when I first moved up here, I realized why it's called Bearsville. I saw a 300-pound black bear just hanging out, just walking across the field. And I'm like in the window, like, whoa, that's amazing. So that's where I live. It's magic here. I love it.
Dude, I grew up in Alaska. So I've got the same with nature. Like there's an appreciation that you have. The people always talk about Alaskans being weird, but when you grow up around things that can kill you all the time that aren't people, you start to have a different respect and kind of know your place in the world a little bit more. So walking to the bus stop for school in the dark, you know, moose all around you that are towering over you, bears in your carport or at the dump, like all in your town. There's something very humbling about that, where you realize, okay, I'm not, you know, because you don't walk around carrying guns up there at all. It's like, that's the only thing that puts us above those creatures, is the fact that we are smart enough to then say, okay, I'm going to shoot this from here behind this rock. Like if we went out hunting with our bare hands, it would never happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And Alaska's beautiful, man. That's awesome.
Dude, it's wonderful. But what I'm getting at is there's a rhythm to nature. I think like there's an overall, like just a simple rhythm to a river or to the stuff in the trees and things like that just recharge. And I miss that a lot because I'm in Portland, or I'm in downtown Portland right now. If I want to go somewhere, I got to drive, you know, to get there. Alaska, you drive 10 minutes any direction. You're camping somewhere in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of Europe. But you walk out your door and you have that recharge. Yeah.
My backyard is beautiful. I see the Milky Way above me. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's funny, man. I have become, it's always something I've connected to ever since I was a kid, because I've been climbing mountains and doing camping since I was a little boy. You know, I grew up in a fairly poor family, so we didn't really do vacations. So our vacations were pack up the car, you know, with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and nutritional bars, and get the tent, and we go camping for the weekend. That was my vacations all through my childhood. So I grew up going to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and like that was my playground. That's where I learned everything about everything. And learning how to like hear what animal makes what call, and footprints, and all those things that I use now on a daily basis here. When my girlfriend gets freaked out, well, what is that? I'm like, all right, that's the coyotes. It's okay. You know, those types of things are important up here because we get all kinds of things, all kinds of noises late at night sitting by the fire. But Alaska, it's funny. Alaska, Portland, that's my friends in 36 Crazy Fist.
Yeah.
That's
friends of mine too.
And that lead singer Brock is a dear friend of mine. I love that dude.
Yeah.
You talk about Alaskans being weird. I love Alaskans. I love the way they think. I love it. I can relate to it, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different world. Although Alaska is wild compared to, I mean, this is nice here, but Alaska, I mean, Denali National Park, I remember driving through that as a kid being like, this is epic. It's so epic.
That's the one thing. It's wild. The mountains are just very jagged. Like there's just like an edge to Alaska that's different than other places. Like I think that's when I notice when I go back is like, you know, the mountains just look different. Like they look like they were literally just shoved through the earth, like not just, you know, growing slowly, but just like, bam, there's that one and that one. You know, it's like what's the Superman, the kryptonite, kryptonite, but like the clear crystals or whatever.
Yes. Oh my God. 80s. Yes.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking of when I look at the mountains in the wintertime. Like, it's just like, whoa, like I could die out here in 2 seconds.
Well, I was just going to say that that's what it is. It's intimidating because like you could die, where the Catskills is kind of like gentle. If you ever been to the Catskills or just look at pictures online, they're gentle green mountains. They're not intimidating. That's kind of why I like it. It's like just enough wilderness, country wilderness where you're not, ranger can come get you within a few hours. Like you're not like Alaska out there is, you could die so easy if you just do something stupid.
Yeah.
Here, there's a safeguard. Catskills are like mountain light. It's not so bad.
Dude, there's that. Have you read that book, Into the Wild?
I haven't read it, but I saw the movie.
You saw the movie.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Though. Yeah.
That bus, they moved it because people were dying.
About this. People kept trying to get out there.
Yes. And they would drown or get lost. And so they literally flew that bus to like buy a National Guard base. They're going to put it in a museum. But yeah, it's just people trying to get to it and sign their name, you know, dying on the way out. They're just not ready for any of it.
I love the idea of that whole, you know, just getting away, but there's a huge part of it that would miss people. But that's the beautiful thing about living close enough to civilization and being out here. I can spend an entire day and not seeing a single person. And then I can get dressed and go have dinner and be around a ton of people. It's perfect.
You have your choice.
Yeah. We're out there. What that dude did, that's intense. That takes mental fortitude. I just don't know that I have.
Dude, if you ever, and you say you're a reader, like if you ever actually read the book, the movie does it a ton of justice. Like the movie's great, close to the book. We read the book in middle school.
Right.
But his sister wrote a book later called The Wild Truth, where when John Krakauer was trying to get the story and the rights to the story to do that Outside Magazine article, there's a lot of details about his family life growing up that she asked him not to put in there. So people for years were saying, who is, like up in Alaska, like, who is this moron that would come up here with no skills and just like go, of course he died. Like they thought he was a moron. Like, why would someone do that? When you read her book about the torture he went through as a child with his father and mother, abuse, father had multiple families, and like just an awful, awful situation, you start to see why he immediately was like, burn my money and get out of here. It's really a heartbreaking book, but it really sheds some light on why he did what he did. And it's pretty, you can partner the books together like one after the other, and it's pretty brutal. But it was interesting. She held all that back. Like even Sean Penn wasn't allowed to put it in the movie. He knew about it because she was a consultant on the movie, but it's super interesting. So it's definitely worth reading. But it is pretty sad.
It's important to have those details as much as somebody might feel shame about it, you know, which sucks. And, you know, abuse makes people do either amazing things or terrible things. And I've learned that a lot just from doing my podcast and hearing people who either become a byproduct of the abuse or rise above it and do something beautiful, and in turn turn around and help people who are coming from a similar situation. Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I would like to know more because I've always wondered that myself, like what drives somebody to just do that.
Yeah.
And that scene in the movie, I love it. I'm like, that's so badass. Like, oh, there's been moments where I'll be on tour and I'm just overwhelmed and exhausted. And I look at my wallet and I'm like, if I just went that way on this trail and just, yeah, I could never do it though. I just fantasize about disappearing. It'll never happen.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, unless you want it to.
Well, yeah, you never know.
Yeah, exactly, dude. See, it's so interesting, like what you do for a living and then what you really enjoy to do when you're not. You have both sides. Like you can be in the chaos. I mean, you're a punk rock dude. Like that the punk rock, there's like a tribalism to it and a community, but at the same time, like it's lashing out against, conformity and things like that. But it's abrasive music. Like it's kind of the exact opposite in a way of nature and like that, like being connected to the earth and the peace. It's like a bucking against that in a way. So it's interesting that you got into that so heavy when the other things really relax you.
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with just teen angst at the time, frustration, and then coming from a family where knowledge was above all. I did tons of research, whether that be politics or religion and you just see the ugly side of humanity. And it really drove me to like uncontrollable anger that I didn't know what to do with. So punk rock saved my life, and then I found these people who, cause punk rock led me into hardcore, and then hardcore was really message driven. I got into the straight edge hardcore because of Minor Threat. And then from there, I discovered all of these bands, and you find like the D-beat and crust punks who are anti-war, peace punks, like all these people that were just speaking all these things that I was like, yes, that, oh my God, yes, that. And it was like, oh, this is the people that I can relate to. And I'm still obsessed with it. Like and there's something about when that music hits and you're in the middle of the pit, and I get this like, yeah, let's do this. It's this animalistic thing that comes out of me. And like to this day, I still jump in pits. Even though I'm an old guy in the pit, I still do it. I love it. But yeah, the majority of my life is spent when I can in solace and quiet, listening to meditative stuff. I've become very monastic in my old age, but the moment I hear a good song or a band's playing, like I'm in, let's go, let's do this. I will throw the fuck down.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's really weird.
But then every night you're starting pits yourself, like from the stage, you see it, you just want to jump into it yourself. Probably.
It's funny though, because there is, and I do sometimes, but there is sort of a meditative state I kind of slip into, especially post surgery, where I realize technique needs to overcome the emotions at certain points. So I don't blow out my voice when I'm doing a low growl or a high pitched scream. It's being cautious of my body and my mind. And that in turn leads me to these weird, clear, peaceful moments on stage. So the band's playing, music's loud, everyone's going crazy. And I'm sort of like aware that I'm a vessel for this weird, especially when you play a song over and over and over again, you can kind of step outside yourself as you're doing it. And I've had these real beautiful moments of like peace where it's absolute chaos everywhere around me. And I'm like zen. I'm like, this is awesome. I got this. And I'm not even thinking about what's happening. I'm just allowing it to happen around me. So maybe that's it. I've just kind of struck this weird balance. But on the whole, I'm a pretty quiet, introverted dude until you get me talking, or I have a couple drinks, and or coffee. I'll just yak.
Dude, do you think it's because of the technique? So you said Melissa Cross, right? The scream coach, like she's awesome, by the way. But she, like some people that are in her camp or not her camp, but under her care, do that like
cry.
Yeah, it's like they're it almost sounds fake, like they're just doing the wah, rah, 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 and cupping the microphone and getting like that. But you don't do that. Like you have the power, and there's a power in, so like hardcore. There's a lot of hardcore bands I didn't like at first because these dudes sounded like they didn't know how to do it, and their voice would squeak all the time, and they're trying to like the emotion is there. But then there's people that can sustain a scream. They can pitch a scream, like Randy. Like they can pitch a scream. They can maintain it without the voice breaking up. But it's real. It's coming from the diaphragm. It's not cupping the microphone and doing the I've always respected that because it takes some severe technique, but also like the aggression behind it. But do you think what I'm getting at here is like you have a focus, you have something to focus on. You know the words, you know how the song goes. That's muscle memory. But when you have a technique to focus on, that's what brings you in and centers you. Is that what you were saying? Like,
yeah,
that gives you into that meditative state because you're focusing on technique to deliver this the right way instead of just pure adrenaline.
Yeah, just throwing it out there, and that's when you pull a muscle, and that's exactly what the voice is essentially. So yeah, I've had to learn like parts that the lyrics will make me feel a certain emotion that's powerful that could really screw up my voice, and it's happened so many times. That's kind of when I take a back seat to it and allow the technique. And once the technique is in place, which they call false chord is what I do. That's the term for it. When you do that properly, it's got this round bell ringing thing where the scream sounds oval. It's just got this, and it resonates through your skull a certain way. It feels meditative. It's incredible when you do it right. But that's taken so long to figure that out. And not every night I'm there. Some nights I don't get enough sleep. Some nights I'm emotional about something. Some nights I'm pissed about something. So it's a constant battle with me when doing that style of screaming. The fry screaming, I respect the hell out of it because you can do way higher highs and way lower lows with that technique. But I tried so hard to do that style. And I can do it at home. I can sit here in my studio and I can do it. But when I go to get on stage, it just doesn't hit that same way that my usual style does. And I can't do it. I tried and I feel silly.
Yeah.
And there are singers like Matt from Trivium, for example. He lost his voice completely and relearned how to do it all through fry screaming. And if you watch him live and you listen, he's got it down. He sounds incredible. He's doing it where it almost matches up to the way he used to do it, but he sounds more round. So there are some people that can pull it off and make it sound incredible, and you wouldn't even know they're doing the fry scream. The way that preserves your voice is incredible. I kind of wish I could do it that way, but there's just something about the old school way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had this conversation with George from Cannibal Corpse Grinder. Who's a friend of mine, and he comes out to all of our shows, and we love them, they love us, which is hysterical. You'd never put the two together, but he's like, what I like you, bro, you don't fake that shit, you go all out. And he's like, people might say Killswitch is kind of soft. He's like, fuck you, bro, that dude's real, doing it fucking for real. And when I got that sign off from Corpse Grinder, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm not changing my style.
Yeah. Dude.
He can do it for like 20 songs and his voice is insane. Yeah.
That's wild. I with him, I didn't know how little he does in the band. Like, doesn't write lyrics. He's just the voice.
The voice.
So
yes.
A compliment like that from the voice and the neck.
Yeah. And I had the honor and pleasure of writing lyrics for an entire record for him. I initially was the ghostwriter for a project called Serpentine Dominion.
Oh, with Adam.
Yeah. So I wrote all the lyrics for that entire record. And initially I was going to ghostwrite it and we weren't going to talk about it. And I'd get paid. And the first interview he does doing press for the project, I'm just happy that Jesse came in and wrote all the lyrics. And I remember hearing him being like, yes, he said it. Now I can talk about it. Because it's one of the coolest moments for me ever. I grew up listening to Cannibal Corpse and I got to write lyrics that he was going to do. It's one of the crowning achievements in my personal life. The 15-year-old me was like, holy shit, I just did that.
Yes. And then hear him singing those words like,
oh, it's so good. Dude. It's so good. I love that project.
I do too. Endless War, I believe, is the song that I love the most. That song is just rips. And dude, yeah, that project was rad. And I couldn't imagine being in that position. Like, it's such a weird thing to write lyrics for someone else. Like, it's something I know it happens. I've never done it.
More than I think. Yeah, it happens a lot more than I think people realize.
Like, too. I think Elton John, there's a lyric writer Elton John uses. He's like a rancher or something out in the desert that writes all Elton John's lyrics. Like,
isn't that insane?
Yeah, it's wild. Like, to think about who actually does what.
It's a lot. I found that out too, going to the Grammys the few times I've been. When you watch the credits roll, during the ceremonies of how many songwriters some of these pop people have, it's like 20 writers on a pop song.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. So literally all you're doing is just like, you're going to the studio and your producer says, do this. And you're like, oh, perfect voice, but you're not a creator. You're the voice. And there's a good amount of people that do it that way. And I can't imagine. It was hard enough for me to rejoin Killswitch and sing songs I didn't write that were Howard Jones's songs.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tough obstacle to overcome. So I can't imagine doing it full time and then making it believable. That's what's even more amazing when you see somebody do it and you're like, you feel the emotion and you're like, wow, that person must have really been through it, man. I feel that. And then turns out they didn't even write the friggin' song. Yeah, it's incredible. It's a whole other skill I don't have to sort of fake it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Dude, when you bring up Howard, I just had him on the show, and one of the weirdest interviews of my life, because the guy just does not, like, if you take things from his lyrics or like the emotion from what you're feeling from what he does, he's like, yeah, I just wrote it. Like, I just wrote it. Like, I don't know. I mean,
he doesn't really want to.
Like, he's just into it, like laughing. And I'm like, dude, that song, like, it puts you on like wings. Oh, yeah. I just wrote it. I don't know, man. Like, I'm like, really? That's it? Like, it was the weirdest interview ever. Like, because we started talking about him being a nerd and being a reader as a child. He's like, well, this is interesting. I haven't talked about this before. I was like, that's what this is about. But anytime I brought up music or like creating things, I was like, just do it. There's nothing to it. I'm like, there's got to be more than that. But
it's funny too, because I've had conversations with that too, and I get annoyed. I'm like, you realize how hard I work to sing good, and you're just like, well, I'm going to sing like an angel.
Yeah,
no big deal. How do you do warm-ups? Nah, I just sing.
Yeah.
Dude, fuck you, man. He's born that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's funny with him. Like, he loves to laugh. So it's more comedy with him. Like, any conversation I've had or been around him, and hearing him laugh is funny. Yeah. He's a great dude, man. But you're right. He's just like, yep. How's that song? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. Yeah, I did it. I sang it. It's cool.
He doesn't put the sentimentality on things or the spirit behind it. Like, it's just, just something I do. I'm just recording a lot.
Yeah, but when you hear him sing, you see him sing, you're like, damn, that dude. Yeah.
But you have the grit. You have the grit.
Do, but with that comes a lot of difficulty. It's like, sometimes I wish I cared less so I could be a better, I don't know what it is. But you're right. It is what it is. And I think that's why people can relate, because I'm not perfect. I'm definitely rough around the edges. I'm more of a blues singer than I am an operatic singer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. And I've learned to embrace it. Not every single night on stage do I sound like a songbird, but you're definitely going to feel what I'm saying regardless. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like my soul takes precedence over technique. And technique has only come, to be completely honest with you, since 2018, where I really started to take it seriously after my surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm just getting started again with this and learning. And the more I learn, the better I'm able to express myself. So it's been an interesting journey.
Well, the cool thing is that you've discovered podcasting and this other side of you, that music isn't all you have, to where, I mean, because being hyper emotional and, I assume probably struggle with depression and things like that quite a bit. I said, I don't know a ton about you, which is why I wanted to talk to you, because I like to learn it from you, not from Loudwire. But when you you blow your voice out, oh shit, I may not be who I think I am anymore, or won't be able to be. That crash that inevitably comes after that rush of fear and worry before COVID, where maybe shows will never happen again. You physically maybe would not be able to do what you do anymore. Losing that identity could bring you into some shit.
Yes.
But now that, and I'm sure it probably did, but the fact that you have another outlet and have seen other things that you're good at and could do, maybe helped, I would say. I mean, am I wrong there? Like, being able to not lose everything. Like, okay, well, I can do this now. Being multifaceted that way.
No one has ever picked up on that, including people that know me really well. That's profound, and it's so spot on. It's so spot on that it's like, get out of my fucking head, dude. What's going on?
Sorry.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that 100%. That's 100% where I've been. And even recently I had some fatigue. I went in for rehearsals. I saw the band again, and we did a bunch of stuff, and I burned myself out because I was doing too much. And there it was again. was, thankfully just temporarily hoarse, but dark feelings are so close because of what I went through. And my netting was, I love to podcast, and that could eventually be a career. I've made a little money of it, but like the better it gets, the more people that listen, the more money that comes in, the more of it becomes a career. And yeah, that gives me a ton of hope because it's something I truly do enjoy. So I know that prior to doing this podcast, my only other option was like bartending or doing cameos constantly. Like that's really it for me. So, I've been doing the cameo thing, but bartending, I obviously couldn't do during the pandemic. So it's definitely changed my life and given me a whole new perspective and has helped me manage my dark side. Cause yes, I do struggle with depression and anxiety. Usually it's anxiety into depression, but yeah, it's something I constantly struggle with, but I've learned to manage it in various ways. But podcasting has definitely been a huge bright light in my life and given me hope for the future outside of music, which I've kind of really never have had. So great.
Dude, this is what we do, man. Like this, I've never met you before. Like this is what's awesome about it is connecting.
Well, you gain wisdom, right? You gain wisdom when you hear people's stories and you navigate people talking. It's a constant learning experience. And that's another thing that I absolutely love about it.
And the only way you think back through time, how do we learn things from other people? Like they teach you how to do something. You learn a lesson from them. You see them do something. They say something, philosophers, they say something profound that's then inscribed on everything we do and our money and things like that. Like someone says something and they're like, that was insightful. Like that hit me here. Just like, with music, you're singing it or screaming it. You're driving that into people the same way, but we always learn from other people, their mistakes, whatever. So
essentially that's what books are though, right? I mean, books are knowledge passed down from other people on paper. So if you're having conversations, it's the living word, really. It's like exchanging a book in real time, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Like we couldn't go on YouTube and watch Marcus Aurelius speak. We can't. He's gone, long gone. Randy and I were talking about this. Like I went out after I had Randy on, I went out and bought the book he was telling me about and, texted it to him. I was like, dude, I've got it. I'm reading it now. He's like, excellent. Like this book that he wrote, it was his meditations as he was dying, presumably of some awful deal that wasn't supposed to be published. It was just his private thoughts and they published it and it's beautiful. But like, it's his words. It's his words from his head that I can read now in 2021 because it's been carried down and it's a beautiful thing. But like, that's what you're saying. Like the books, anything, just through time, other people teach other people and it just grows. Now technology is teaching people things or showing things that they don't need to see, getting too much information, and then
being manipulated by said information because the person behind it can easily put out something that isn't true and say it's true. And we are seeing that all over the place on social media and through media. And that to me has been really interesting on many levels, but, it's practice, isn't it? It's anything you do over and over again, you're practicing. So there is a true art form to an interview or a conversation, and learning how to listen and be present and not respond immediately with your thoughts about something and allowing that person to be and to tell their story. All of these things have trickled down into my personal life. I've become a better partner. I've become a better son. I truly have, because you can't help but take in people's experiences and learning how to navigate them to create a podcast that's worth listening, that people are like, oh, this was good. The only reason it's good is if the host is humble enough to know when to speak and then know when to allow. That whole process to me is just profound, really. I love it. And it's something that I think anyone who practices that, unless you're a comedian or one of those, there's so many comedy podcasts too, where the whole point is to cut people off and be a jerk about it. But it's been a huge eye-opening experience for me, for sure. It's great.
Dude, it's an ego check for sure to give up that control and to have, the back and forth, like the reason I don't prepare for these things is because not out of ego or out of anything other than I want to be present. If I'm looking at notes, if I'm looking at the clock, I'm thinking of what I'm going to say next and I'm missing, there's podcasts I listen to, well, don't anymore, but I would listen to, and someone would give this really profound statement or open the door to this very huge thing that had happened in their life. And the host would just say, got it. So when you were in high school, you know, and I shut it off. I was like, you just fucked this up. You know, like for everyone that gave their time to listen to this, you just destroyed that hour of their life with mindless shit.
It's happened to me quite a bit being on the, you know, the other side of an interview where someone's interviewing me and I'm like, go in and they respond like that. And I'm like, literally like, guess we're not talking about that anymore. Okay, moving on. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I don't prepare either. We'll have bullet points maybe off to the side, but you're right. You can't do that because you are going to miss those magical moments and those moments. And I'm sure you notice this when you kind of know when it's done or you kind of know when to move on. Like that final breath, there's an energy exchange. Even on Zoom, I can feel it. You're like, oh, this conversation's done. And you know it. And if you're looking at notes, you're not paying attention, then it could potentially be you awkwardly ending the interview because you're like, oh, it's been an hour. We've got to stop now. Yeah. All that shit. It's like annoying. And I feel like, what's the word? I feel embarrassed for people sometimes. I'm like, don't do it that way. Oh, it's so awkward.
It's that cringe we love to watch. Like it's like those fail videos people love to watch. They're just like, oh, like it's that. I get anxiety.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm like, no. Funny. See, like skate video. When I was a skateboarder, everyone used to love watch the bail videos. Like, oh, watch people bail. I'm like, no, that's horrible. I don't want to watch someone have a disaster. That's horrible,
dude. There's an Instagram called the Hall of Meat. And it's all like skateboard bails. It just like broken bones and faces, and it's awful. But
why is that fun? I don't get it.
Oh, people want to live vicariously through other people, man. They want to. They won't go out and do that, so they'd rather watch them do it and just be like, ooh, instead of going out and trying to skateboard
and laugh at people's pain.
Yeah, exactly. We love to watch people fail, dude.
Horrible
reality shows like the Spiral, the all that stuff. Like we love to watch people fail as a human race.
I'm a hypersensitive empath. It's not for me. I'd rather see people happy. I can't do shit. I know I'm such a big sap. I can't. I feel so bad for people. It ruins everything for me.
That's what makes you a good podcaster is the empathy. And exactly what you're saying, dude. Like, you know when it's over, you know when if you're engaged, there's no such thing as a hard out, like that we say in media. Okay, hard out at 3. Like if it's going somewhere, it's not a hard out. Like it could be 2:55 and it's over before the hard out. Like then you're trying to extend it to that amount of time. Right. Like, okay, keep them going. Like it's ridiculous. And
it's funny you say that too, because I've listened to podcasts where I know after 20 minutes, I'm like, ooh, they've got to try to push now. They're getting these really short responses from this person who clearly doesn't give a shit. And they've got to, certain podcasts, they have to fulfill their content. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, I'm going to hang on just to see how this person navigates it. And you're almost rooting for the host. You're like, come on, you can do this. It's tough, man. But, again, that's an art form. I truly believe it is an art form. That's why when I mentioned Matt, my co-host, mm-hmm. I call him an artist. He's not just an interviewer. He's not just the guy that used to work for Metal Hammer or whatever. He truly has become an artist in my eyes because I've watched and listened to him navigate difficult conversations. Gene Simmons from Kiss, like notoriously a tough guy to interview. Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. You listen to these interviews and he's just in it. And he's natural at it. And I'm like, that's where I kind of learned the ropes from someone like him who just knows how to do it. And I respect the shit out of that. I love listening to podcasts where people know what they're doing. Because, and this is it about podcasting. It's like they're your companion for a while. Do you want to be in a room full of people who are a room of people who are being awkward? Or do you want to be in a room full of people who are like, there's an energy there and you're along for the ride and you're sitting nodding and smiling, doing your work or whatever you're doing? To me, that's ultimate. That's almost as good as listening to good music as listening to a good podcast.
Yeah, there's a rhythm and a cadence to a conversation. If you're not, people edit their podcasts to make it seem like they're rapid firing and going, they're doing their thing. there's like a 20-second pause in there they're cutting out to make it sound like it really went well, which is just a front. You know, like right now, what we're doing is going to go in front of thousands of people. It does every week. And those people, that energy is there too. Like what they're going to take from it, what they're going to take from this being a fly on the wall in the conversation. And the fact that conversation is an art form it's an old thing, but all of a sudden with podcasting, it's like a new awakening where people want the long form conversation that they are lacking now because everything's rapid fire. Here's your 10-second news clip. Here's your 2 questions at the festival with the band playing right behind them.
Oh my God.
You know, this is how people are getting information. Like this is, so they're craving. That's why podcasts are thriving, because people are craving the long form conversation, because it's like, wow, I remember when we used to do that. Like talk.
Right. Exactly. And that's why our podcast is called Stoke the Fire. The idea of sitting around a fire, harkening back to like before we had TV, internet, any of that stuff. That's what we would do in our tribalism. People gather around the fire to eat, then they talk, and then they, you know, plan out the next day or talk the tribal, whatever. So they got to solve a problem together. And I think that's a loss. You're right. It gets lost because we're in this culture where everything is sound bites. Everything's quick. The attention span of people scrolling on their phones, even while listening to a podcast, still scrolling and still like not fully engaged in what's going on. And that's just who we are as a species right now, for better or for worse. And that's truly why I love the long format, because, for example, this morning, I've been doing press for the Times of Grace record. My morning was radio stuff from 10 a.m. up through the afternoon. I knew what I was getting into, and sure enough, like they're 20-minute interviews at the most, and you're saying the same thing pretty much over and over again. And I dislike it, but I also get it. This is what I got to do to sell my record and get people to listen to it. And then when I have interviews or conversations, I should say, like this, I don't even care what time it is. I don't even care. Like, thankfully, I have nothing to do after this. Like, I'm comfortable. This is where I sit comfortably, and I enjoy it. And I think that, you know, the more people listen to this type of stuff, the more people understand, because podcasting is becoming something much bigger than it was 10 years ago. I mean, I only got into listening to it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It's just a beautiful thing because it's about connection. It's about storytelling. There's something so beautiful about it.
There's no gatekeepers. That's the thing. Like I watched Dan Carlin. When I was on my first network, we went to this thing called Podcast Movement, which is basically a money grab to, you know, a bunch of people in their basement trying to start hey, I have an idea for a podcast, pay $600 and get a ticket to this thing and go watch other people that have like a very small listenership that have been doing it a while tell you how to be successful. It's one of those things. But they got Dan Carlin from Hardcore History, one of the biggest podcasters around, to do the keynote. And he said the one thing that he can say he's proud about, like with Apple, like just as a corporation and what they had control over, when they made podcasting free, like they didn't charge for it, they leveled the playing field to you sitting right there and Joe Rogan and Mark Maron and all these guys, even playing field. It didn't matter who you were, what you could pay for, what kind of gear you get. It's free. So anyone can put up a podcast. I could just sit here and talk to myself for 20 minutes, push, submit or publish, and it goes out to the whole world if they want to find it. It leveled the playing field and anyone can do it. They can physically make a podcast. Making a good podcast is something different. But the fact that there's no gatekeepers, same thing with punk rock. Like, do you have an instrument? Can you play it? Not really. Okay, well, let's start a band.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's the accessibility.
Wild West.
Yep.
There's no FCC.
That's why I got into punk rock, and that's truly why I got into podcasting. It just, you know, it opens the door to you. And that possibility is incredible because you don't know where it's going to take you. I mean, case in point, being a musician who's toured and traveled. When we started playing music, we weren't like, oh, I'm going to be a big fucking rock star. I never thought that. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this with my friends and have a good time. And then before I knew it, you know, years down the road, I was playing in front of thousands of people because I saw a band like, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a shittier band than The Clash, because The Clash was definitely one of my gateway bands. But I don't know, like a regular ass hardcore band that didn't have a ton of talent. I saw that. I stood near the stage and I was thinking to myself, oh, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what podcasting is. You're right. But the difference is it good or is it bad? And who's going to listen and who's not going to give a shit? Because I've listened to some bad podcasts, dude. Even when the audio is just painful to listen to, you're like, ow.
Yeah. To
this day, I still hear those.
See, that's the thing. If anyone can do it, like everyone's going to do it. And the cream will rise to the top, right? Like and so it's funny, like Joe Rogan, he has this couple $1 million studio that he has because he wants it. He doesn't need it. I did our first 155 episodes in my car. Like, I still am using my Zoom recorder right now, running out of my headphone jack on my laptop. The only reason I have a laptop in front of me is so we can Zoom. Otherwise, it's the Zoom recorder and the mic. I have the same microphone I did with Adam in the same recorder that I just brought in a briefcase and did it right there and was out. Like the tour manager was like, "Where's your stuff?" I was like, "That's in this little bag here." Oh, okay. That's easy. Yeah, I'll be in and out. Boom, boom. And I'll be in my car. I'd be in the bathroom. I'd be in my union hall, my apprenticeship for plumbing. Like, I would tell him I had a conference call. I need to use a classroom. I had Keith Morris from Black Flag on with my Zoom recorder for an hour and a half. Like, anywhere. It's like guerrilla warfare. Like, it's just anywhere you want to do it, you can do it. And if the content's there, people will listen. You know, and that's how you learn, is just like these little things, like being with adversity, just like with punk rock, with anything. Adversity, you learn to get through it, but then you also learn the lessons on how to do things the right way and the wrong way, you know?
Yeah. And people want to hear victory stories. People want to hear suffering stories. Mm-hmm. There's something to be learned from every conversation. And that's something I learned very quickly, especially having listeners on our podcast, which, the numbers might not be astounding. People might not want to just listen to some random person, but the moment they take a chance and they do listen to our listener podcast, they oftentimes go deeper than the people that are notable, because everybody's got an intense story depending on where you come from. And case in point, we're talking earlier about Bradley, who passed away. I've never heard of anyone surviving. I think he said like close to 100 overdoses, like insane amount of overdoses, what that dude lived through. And the hope he sort of gave, God rest his soul now, but to people who are addicts. And we would see the comments coming in. We would read messages and emails of people just latching onto this story of this guy, this random guy that is just a quote unquote normal everyday person.
Yeah.
And everyone's got something. Everybody has something to contribute. And that commonality, that connection we all have as humans, there's a real beauty to that. And the fact that there's no real format you have to stick to if you don't want to with a podcast, you never know what kind of beauty and magic or hysterical things you're going to capture. And that to me excites me more than anything, because you're right. There's a freedom there. It's just, what do you want to do? Whatever you want to do. It's like when Seinfeld came on, people were like, what's the show about? It's about nothing. And it became one of the biggest shows in the entire history of television, a show based on absolutely nothing. And I love that. It just makes me really happy, because anyone can do it. You listening right now to our podcast, this podcast right now, you can start a podcast. Go.
Exactly.
Do it.
Jerry Seinfeld's the highest paid actor in Hollywood because of syndication from that show. Like, he's one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. He's done the B movie and Seinfeld. Like, it's wild. It's wild.
And now he does comedians in cars getting coffee, which he just does because he's got nothing to do. He's just sitting on millions of dollars going, I'm going to get coffee with my friend and we're going to film it in the car. A car that I'm going to rent that I like, that I think's interesting.
Which Porsche am I going to choose?
Yeah, it's a decent show, but what makes that show funny to me more than anything is Seinfeld's attitude. He just doesn't give a shit. Yeah. It's kind of amazing. He just doesn't care. He's got nothing to lose at all. I love it.
It's wonderful. And the other thing is, she was like, being honest as a person, like being honest with your intentions with when it comes to both with anything, but with podcasting. Like, so I emailed you through the Stoke the Fire email, because I know we have mutual friends, but I was like, I'm just going to reach out and see what happens. You got back to me. We were going to set this up. And then literally like a day or two later, Tim from Adam Splitter emails me. I was like, hey, Times of Grace Records coming out with the press release. The typical one. I get 50 of them a day. And I'll usually just scroll through them and delete most of them, because I don't like going through publicists, not because of publicists, but I don't. So I just started being honest. I said, you know what? I want at least an hour. I don't want to talk about the new record. We probably won't anyway. And I don't want to be in a press junket.
I don't need to.
And I said, and I'll send that flat out to them. And some people are like, okay, fuck you. Or other people are like, wow, thank you for saying, like, okay, let me talk to management and see what we can do. Great. So the last year I've been doing, just people have been introducing me to other people. Like, oh, you should have so-and-so on. Oh, do you know him? Then hook us up. And we'll just text about it and then do it. No publicists involved, no management. But when it is a publicist, so I've turned down like Ace Frehley from Kiss. Like, they offered me 15 minutes. I was like, I'm not going to waste this time. I can't do what we do in 15 minutes. 15 and they're like, well, thank you for saying that, because then, like, I was like, yeah, let me know when he's not doing a press junket and he wants to chat. We'll do it. And it never happened. But yeah, anyways, that's a tangent, but.
Yeah, but some people don't want to go deep either, Like some people are comfortable within that. I mean, I can only imagine with him, someone who's been doing it as long as he has, and he probably doesn't want to talk about his personal life. He probably doesn't give a shit he doesn't want to talk about it. I'm assuming, and he just wants to plug his record and make his money. Like, there's some people that just don't have that in them. Where for me, my toes curl up sometimes when I'm doing press to like promote. I'm like, ugh. I have no right to complain to some people because my job rules, and I'm promoting my art, which is amazing. But I've done press tours where I'll go to Europe for a week and I'm doing 72 interviews, and maybe 4 of them I'm like, wow, that was good. This person knew what they're talking about, or this person was interesting, and we talked off topic from the 10,000 same questions I've had over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Short form, that stuff is good to promote because people want bullet points and they're like, oh, I might check out the record now. That has a place for sure. But when you're where you are in your career, where you can make that decision and choose, you're potentially avoiding like a very awkward, sort of uncomfortable situation. And like when you said 15 minutes and we've been sitting here just yapping, can you imagine 15 minutes? What do you do with 15 minutes? Like, holy shit, there's zero time to be personal. There's zero time to like be comfortable with what you're doing. You've got to get to that point in 15 minutes. And yeah, I can't imagine doing that shit either.
Dude,
no thanks.
You got to give enough of yourself too. Like it's an exchange. I try to explain that to people that sure, if you have a topic you want to talk about that is deeper, you don't just go into that. You have to establish some kind of a rapport. You have to give some of yourself. You can't just say, hey dude, tell me about that time you OD'd, like, or hey dude, tell me about that. You can't do that. You don't deserve that. You have given nothing of yourself. So you have to establish something, and that takes some time. Yeah. Establishing
trust and a rapport with somebody, which is super important. I think with anything, any kind of, the same thing, you're in a bar with somebody, you meet somebody, you're having a nice conversation. You don't just go right for the jugular.
Exactly. You start with, hey, can I sit down? Yeah. Sure.
Are you a raging alcoholic? I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. What?
Can I buy you around? Can I, you ask, like you don't just walk up, hey man, you look depressed. You want to talk about it? Like, it's like, hey, can I sit? You have to start somewhere. Can I sit here?
I don't know.
Is this seat taken?
Like, what the fuck?
Basic shit. Yeah, I saw you on Loudwire. You're talking about some crazy shit. You want to go deeper? Like, yeah, you gotta start somewhere, and you have to give enough of yourself. You can't just be guarded and expect someone to spill their guts to you. And that's not what it's about either. Is spilling the guts, but sometimes it goes there.
Yeah, there's a whole psychology to it, and you can tell. Especially when you're dealing with, Zoom, where you can see each other, or in person, because you're reading the person's body language, their eye contact, which in this case is a little weird. Because for me to make quote unquote eye contact with you, I'm looking at my camera.
Yeah,
but that's a whole thing I learned early on. Even just being a performer on stage and using my body language to accentuate what I'm singing about, or what I'm saying, or how I'm trying to relate to you in the audience. And when I was younger, I never used to make eye contact because I was a timid little hardcore kid, punk rock or whatever. And as I got older, I remember like specifically talking to certain singers. It was Jet from Sam Black Church, which is a band I grew up listening to and seeing. And I remember he pulled me aside once because we played a show with his newer band, Jet Fuel, which is years later. And he's like, you're really good at what you do, but you got to start making eye contact. Like, make me believe what you're saying. And that stuck with me. psychology of delivering your message, or the psychology of making somebody comfortable enough to like start opening to you and start allowing themselves to show their true colors and not be guarded. You know, you can tell when someone's not giving you all of their selves. You can just kind of read them, at least if you're tuned into that kind of energy. And it's amazing to watch somebody slowly. You see their shoulders drop, they sit back, they lean forward if they're really engaged. Getting to know all those little signs, and like you can really navigate somebody or even manipulate somebody if you need to, if you're that kind of a journalist. And I've seen it happen. I've been on both sides of it. You know, I've had interviewers who they're trying to be slick and they're trying to get something out of me so they can use it for their tagline of the interview. And like, I've been played before, and I don't do that anymore. Like, oh, they try to get you to talk shit. I'm like, I'm not a sucker, man. Maybe when I was like 18, 19 years old, all bright eyed and like, oh, I want to be, let's do this. Like, nope, that ain't me. But there's a real psychology behind it. And I've been learning a ton on the other side of the interview, all the things I've learned from being the guy being interviewed to being the person who's trying to get that person to open up. It's been quite an eye-opening experience.
Dude, it's 100%. You took the words right from me of the lean in. There's always the lean in. There's not always the lean in, but when you get the lean in, it's there. Like, and going back to Howard again, not talk about Howard on this podcast a whole bunch, but he's kind of like sitting back, kind of shoulders up, coffee, like got his coffee and he's doing his thing. Like, fuck, another interview. I hate doing these. And I knew this going into it. He doesn't like interviews, and that's fine. It's not an interview, but it's hard to explain to someone that in the beginning, like, you know, publicists, like even Amy, like it's not like, she's like, I understand what you do, but I have to explain it to this person. We don't talk about any of the stuff that he thinks we're going to talk about because that's not what I'm there for. I had asked about having him on before I'd even knew a new record was coming out. 10 minutes in or so, he puts his coffee down. Oh, clears his throat a little bit. Like, this is interesting. I don't talk about these. Let's do this. I was like, there we go. And we went off in the weeds, and it was beautiful. I loved it. But there's that body language, like put the coffee down, like, and step away from it, or the sit back, lean in, any of that stuff. Like, it's all, the FBI has been doing this for a long time, like figuring out when people are lying, or, you know, there's body language, where the eyes go, where the, you know, basic demeanor like changes. When someone gets excited about something, they kind of light up. There's this spark, and it's wonderful to see. Yeah.
My father is a very well-educated man, and he's a retired minister and a professor. And he taught me a ton about this particular topic. And one of the things I learned early on, when I started to get interviewed, and I wanted to make the interviewer comfortable to get a better interview, because that's how I used to think. It was like, if this person's comfortable, I'm going to have a better interview. So I would mimic their body language. If somebody crossed their legs, I'll slowly cross my legs. If someone's doing this when I'm talking to them, I'll back away and I'll slowly kind of put my arms up too. And you can see the disarming happening when you start to mimic them, because there's a certain comfort with it's so funny how deep this runs in human psychology and psyche. And it's funny when you learn it and you can recognize it and you can use it to your benefit, and not in a bad way, just like how to ease somebody, how to, like, even in a job interview, you know, I've used that in a job interview, the same thing. Like, if I see somebody backing away, I do the same thing. You mimic them, and then you can see them slowly let their guard down because you're making them comfortable by just using psychology.
Exactly.
I learned that from my pops.
Dude, that's wonderful. Like, and he's watching people's body language all the time. He's a minister. All like, he's got to run that crowd. Like, and a professor. Yes. And so the art form is, though, not thinking about it, not being like, I got him. Like, it's, you know, and your brain just automatically switches. Okay, I want to talk about this now. You know, or picking on things, like someone gives you a 5-minute monologue on something, and then there's 3 things in there that you want to pick on. Then it's okay to, the door's just open and it flows. It's not like, oh, he did it. Okay, he's looking at me. He leaned in. Perfect. But later you can look at it and watch how it went, and it's like, okay, that's where that disarmed that did that. You know, you learn these things over time and utilize them in a smooth way. Like going back to Keith, in that interview with Keith, like, you're leaning back kind of to the side, just kind of like, you know, it's the first episode, of course, but you're disarmed. Like, you're just relaxed, and you see Keith sitting very straight, and he's kind of like shoulders up, like, and he's joking about his shirt. Like, You probably never seen me wear a shirt like this before because you guys have been friends a long time, as you mentioned in the beginning. And if you just watch it from a body language standpoint, you sit back and you let him talk. And then you chime in when you need to. And that alone, you see his face get red because he's starting to bring up topics that are rough for him. And you just guide him through it. And that's when I saw that. I was like, okay, Jesse has some stuff he's wrestling with too, because he understands how this feels. And that is where, when I said, I want to talk to this guy, I'm stoked that he needs to do this. That's awesome. That's part of it, was that body language, is watching. You barely had to say anything to disarm him. And of course you're friends, but that's hard shit to talk about, even with friends. And even harder sometimes.
Yeah, I've applied that to almost everything. And you're right. It sort of is just something I naturally do because I think it's just genuine curiosity.
That's 100% it.
My favorite thing in the world is when that person is talking. And, I'll have little points I want to make. But if they continue to talk, sometimes they even touch upon the thing you were going to ask them. So just hang on for the ride and wait for the right moment to interject or to add to the conversation. And I love it. I get a charge out of it where I'm like, ooh, that's a good point. Remember to say that, but stay in it. I'll have certain people on the podcast where I'm like, shit, I'm going to remember to even say this. I'm like, let go of it, bro. Let go. Just keep going. And then they'll finish their sentence and they've already touched upon it. So it's really just a give and take. And I could say the same thing about being on stage. Opening for Iron Maiden, case in point. You get up on stage, the first 5 or 6 rows are packed with people with Iron Maiden merch on, and they are just arms crossed like, who are these assholes? Show me who you are. What do you got? And the battle that it takes in your head to do what you do and show them we love this. This is what we love to do. It was incredible for us because I've opened for big bands before. For Iron Maiden, it's one of the biggest metal bands in the world. And that was a real lesson for me to let go of my ego, let go of my shit, and don't try to be a badass. Show these people that we love what we do. And by that, we're going to somehow get you to have fun too. And 9.9 times out of 10, we won them over simply by just having fun, making jokes, self-deprecating occasionally, and then just performing at our best. And you see those crossed arms, the head starts to nod a little bit. And then they're like, oh, and then someone will play a cool riff and the arms drop a little bit and the horns go up. And by the end of the set, we had the crowd most nights. And what an incredible learning experience that was. Taking a band like Killswitch, who, for years we were headlining our own shit. We were doing just fine. And then you get these invitations to play with these bigger bands. It's like, oh shit, how are we going to survive this? And what an experience that is. And that's, to me, sort of the only way I could think about comparing the two is watching an audience open up, watching an audience start to enjoy you. And those nights that are a good show versus a bad show, it's all the audience. Even if you perform not as good, if the audience is there with you and they're carrying you and they're accepting of you and that energy is in the room, there's nothing like it. It's incredible. Where you could be spot on. You're playing like the record. It's perfect. And the audience doesn't give a shit. You're going to leave that stage being like, fuck, that sucked. No matter how well you performed. And to me, that's the deeper stuff. That's the stuff of humanity that oftentimes goes unspoken because it's just an energy, that exchange of energy. And that's the one thing I would say over anything I've missed during the pandemic, during this whole time of not having that high of performance, that exchange, and actually being able to tap into it through podcasting. Like we said earlier on, that was the moment, the magic moment of oh, this can be achieved otherwise. There's another way to tap into this incredible energy. And that's kind of when I realized I'm not in it for I've never been in it for the fame, but I'm not in it for the fame and I've never been that guy. And I never really quite put my finger on what it exactly was. I just knew that there was purpose. It was purpose driven. I write my lyrics very intentionally to speak to people, but you could get up there and speak to people. And if they're not receiving it, it doesn't matter. It's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So it's that moment of exchange that happens when that aha moment between you and the audience when you're making eye contact with somebody, and I will watch as they are in tears singing every single word of that song. Mm-hmm. And it just takes me out of the moment. And I'm like, how, this is incredible. Like, this is it. That's it right there. That exchange. And I'll leave and go back to the dressing room, and I'll get teary eyed myself and be like, oh my God, what's that person's story? And after that started happening to me, I make a point to get off stage and hug that person, or bring the mic to them and hold them while they sing. Those moments have been the most incredible moments of my career, regardless of the fucking Grammys or awards to be the best metal band or album sales. It's that exchange between audience and performer that you can tap into on a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I'm hooked for life. That's it. One way or another, I need that energy. Yeah. Because it just keeps me going. And it gives me purpose.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That moment you're talking about, you got to think too, how many hundreds of thousands of times that happens in someone's room where they're not there with you, but they are. So that one time that you're holding that person, you know, it's like when they say 1% of your audience will actually reach out to you and email you. Is a good way to gauge your following is 1% will react to what you're doing and say something to you on email or respond to a call to action or whatever. That one person you're holding on to, you think of the ripple effect of how many people that can't come out to the shows are in their room crying to this song, or punching the wall to this song, or putting the needle down to this song, or putting whatever it is away and changing their life. It's a beautiful thing to think about, that ripple effect. And then in 20 years, what band is that person you were holding on to into that's on a podcast talking about, well, what was the moment for you? Well, Jesse got off the stage and grabbed me and put the mic in my face. And I was like, I could do this. You know, how many times is that happening? You know, it's just that beautiful ripple effect of the energy. You know, I think this just popped in my head, but I think the best cops would be former podcasters or podcasters, because you can connect with people and disarm things and be able to talk through things versus going and beating the shit out of them or whatever, you know, like you can step in, or a mediator, to become a mediator. Just being able to think on your feet, you know, it takes practice, but once you get there, I mean, it's a skill I wish everyone could have, you know, and be able to just thrive. But that, what you're talking about there, you're also standing next to a dude in a cape. So being able to disarm the Iron Maiden fans, you know, I was just in my head thinking of watching Adam in a cape and watching all those people just like arms crossed, like, who the fuck is this guy?
It's funny because you'll see nights where he's very self-aware and doesn't get half as crazy as he usually does. He reads the audience too, and he feeds off them as well. So a show where we're sort of out there to sort of prove it or win the audience over, he's actually will hold back on some of the shit he'll say or do, because he's very aware of, like, we're trying to win this audience over. But then there are nights it's all off. Like we did a tour with Rise Against, and a lot of their fans are, you know, really politically minded and really serious and extremely liberal and, like, you know, don't want to be offended. And Adam would just go in some nights. And I remember this specific night where he just kept making pussy jokes, and it was like these two very obviously looking like punk rock feminist type girls with their mom. Like, it was a whole family of, like, probably really serious people, which much respect. I totally respect that. And I'm always very careful not to offend. That's just me. But Adam he just kept going in, and I'm like, dude, read the room, please, for the love of God, read the room. And, like, the woman has got a younger child and keeps putting earmuffs on the kids' ears. And, like, I said out loud, I'm like, Adam, you know, there are children. Fuck the kids. Like, he had one of those nights. He's just got a vendetta to just insult somebody. So it depends. Like, he'll turn it on and off depending on the audience and depending on his mood. Sometimes he doesn't even read the audience. So yeah, it can be difficult. There are nights where I'm like, I'll get deflated because I'll start to say something very, you know, this song, and, like, just say titties. I mean, I don't know. It depends. And I'll just stop. I'll either laugh and enjoy it, or I'm like, all right, I'm going to shut the fuck up then. That's what it's like being in a band with him, dude. Is he's a total mastermind genius, but he's a wild card. You never know what's gonna happen. People call me the front man of Killswitch. No, truly, I am the singer. Adam D is the front man. Yeah. I wanted to go back to a point you made, and I thought it was very interesting because it's something I've been contemplating a lot lately. How you're saying people who can't make it to shows and maybe are watching you on the internet. That's what really fascinates me about streaming and how bands started to do that streaming thing and how Killswitch finally got, talked into the idea of it. Was that exact thing. It's like, there are people in, India, Israel, places we've never been before that will see that we're doing a streaming concert and will finally be able to experience not just a YouTube video of somebody holding a shaky camera, but a professionally shot thing where we're singing to you. So as you were watching, this is a whole new thing for a lot of people. And you saw a band like Code Orange. They were like one of the first people to really jump on it. And it's incredible to see that there's a whole new, like even after we go back to playing shows, there's still going to be a market and a whole new thing for streaming concerts. It's really opened this huge door, just much like Zoom has with the conversation or with business meetings or with, dance parties. I even attended a dance party early on in this pandemic. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the woman. She's a New York City party person. She puts on drag shows. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend was a performer in a place called House ES in Brooklyn, which is like acrobatics and pole dancing and cage dancing. She's a crazy performer. She found out about this party and we've just been depressed in lockdown alone. And like you pay $10 and you get a Zoom link. And we partied, and every 2 minutes, the screen would change. Well, not 2 minutes, 30 seconds. The screen would change to another party goer. So you have people in their bathtub with bubbles on them dancing. You have people dressed in full drag with disco lights in their living room dancing. Then they show the DJ. Then they show the person who's putting on. And it was like, as I was watching that, my mind was starting to blow. Like we're entering into a whole new era of possibility and connection, where we can see bands putting on these crazy performances in these big spaces with professional lights. And the audience is you. There's nobody there but you. And I think we're going to see some incredible shit. There's going to be those innovators, people like Bjork and Radiohead who've always taken shit to this whole other level. We're going to start seeing bands, even as this world opens up, that are going to take advantage of this streaming thing and do it to a whole other level where it's going to be like watching a movie. And I'm excited for that as well. We're just kind of getting on board with that. A lot of bands who've just been touring maniacs are just getting on board with this idea. And I'm excited for the future of that because I know we're just at the beginning of what the possibility of performing to that single person in their home now. We're going to cater to you. You're not going to see shitty YouTube footage. We're going to professionally give you an amazing performance that's just for you. That, mark my words, I truly think that's going to be a whole other level of maybe even replacing touring for some people. Dude, who knows?
Yeah, if you could make all that money in one night, like without all the travel, holy
across
shit.
The world.
Yeah,
your audience is the globe.
Yep,
and you're charging $10. You get, I don't know, some of the more popular people. You get 500,000 people. Mm-hmm. Dude, that's nuts. That's nuts.
Exactly, and it's just going to lead to more innovation. How to do it the right way. This worked for us. Okay. There's going to be new technology and devices that are going to come out to process this. And
this is an ongoing conversation too, because you think about how album sales kind of fell off and we're tour, exhaust yourself to tour the world. And now here we are. Is there light bulbs going off on people's heads? Mm-hmm. Like you could potentially minimize the amount of road time. If you just spend a month producing this incredible show, the paycheck you could potentially get from that, it's a year of touring.
Yep.
So we're on the cusp of something really fucking cool.
Dude, I agree.
Remember I said that.
I agree. You heard it here, fuckers.
I should copyright that shit, bro.
Dude, I completely agree with you there. And it's going to be intense to see where things go. And and I've been talking about like the Foo Fighters doing this sold out Madison Square Garden show, like testing the waters, getting things back. Like, of course, what other band is going to do that? A 13-time Grammy winning band. I'm interested to see where that goes and what happens. And it's just such a weird time. And I'm really feeling inspired from this, dude, because like, hearing your perspective on things, and getting to know you through this, like I said before, not knowing you before, not having even met before, getting your perspective on things and hearing how much you love the medium and how much you're getting into this and what it's doing for you and showing you your worth in a different way, giving your identity basically a duplicate, like I'm this and this now, instead of I'm just this. If something happens, I'm screwed. Like that little bit of insight too is awesome, because it just shows that we're capable of so many things. It's easy to pigeonhole yourself, but you're just a multifaceted person. It's awesome.
Yeah. And you can be in your 40s and still expand, like I never thought, first of all, I would be still doing music in my 40s. And now here I am thinking about, this is a whole other medium now. Mm-hmm. And then now when I have these creative moments, it's not just about what can I do with a lyric or a song. It's like, what can we do with this guest? Mm-hmm. And now the new thing for Matt and I that we've talked about since the beginning, but now we see the world opening up, is let's do this now in person with an actual fire. We took inspiration from Joe Strummer, who did this at Glastonbury Festival. He had a fire and he would have people gather around. You can see it on the documentary about, the last documentary made about him before he passed, where he is sitting around a fire and then people gathered around that fire to pay tribute to him. So our idea rather, was let's take this on the road. Let's do a road trip where we stop in LA, we stop in Vegas, we stop in New Orleans, and we find a fire and we invite people on and we have cameras. And like, this isn't just a podcast anymore. It's now a travel show. Mm-hmm. It's now a music festival where we have like a bunch of punk bands play, and we have mental health workers giving talks, and we have yoga instructors, and we have vegan food. There's just so much you can do. It doesn't have to be just a podcast. It can be a brand. It can be whatever the hell you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And it kind of follows suit with the whole idea of like, it's the Wild West. If you're opening a door, you have enough of an audience, you can kind of do anything with it. You don't have to sit in the studio and make it just that. You could, depending on where you are, you could be outside, which, with sound, it might be horrible, but I don't know. To me, it just excites my brain to think I've got a whole new lease on life because of a conversation with somebody. Yeah.
And you found it in your 40s.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing. No midlife crisis anymore.
No, I did. Yeah, thankfully I've never really had that. But yeah, I turned 43 in 4 days.
Dude, and happy birthday early.
Still going, man. If you would have told me when I was in my 20s, I'd still be doing this or still be alive even. Because at that point, I don't know, man. So every day is a blessing, isn't it? You get to wake up and do what you love in one way or another. If that's what you've chosen to do and you've pursued it and you've been fortunate enough to do it, even on my worst days, I have to remind myself, it's not so bad.
Exactly. Someone always has it worse, and you've got a fucking awesome job too. And it's just a wonderful thing to have all these different facets to you and finding all these things out, even this late in life, not even late in life, but if you discovered podcasting when you were 12, it'd be a lot different. It hit you different. There's always I'm glad we're having this conversation now. If I reached out to someone 3 years ago, like Randy, to have him come on and manage, I was like, who the fuck are you? No. If I wait until Tim Borer asks him to do it for me, he's like, okay, just book it. But I'm glad I'm talking to you now, because back then I didn't have these things to say. I didn't have these skills at all honed. It was right, new, fresh. Who do I want to talk to and reach out to the biggest people? I'm glad we're having this conversation now, much like with you. I'm glad we're having this conversation now instead of at the Roseland in 2017, right? Because I'm prepared for it life-wise. I'm in it. I've been looking forward to it. And I'm really glad we were able to do it, because it's like I said, I'm leaving this inspired and ready to rock, into next week. It gives me more fuel to keep rolling, and hopefully you got something from it too. I've just really enjoyed it, man.
Likewise. I absolutely walked away because, you know how it is. I'm taking what you said. I'm taking, the energy that we exchanged. And also sometimes when you're saying something, you're realizing it as you say it. And there's a few things I've said where I'm like, ooh, That's interesting. I'm glad I said that. I got to remember that shit. Yeah, it's a constant evolution, and it's a beautiful thing, man. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that energy is here. We're towards the end of that conversation. It's a really nice period on the sentence. Like,
yeah.
And someday I would love to break bread with you in person and meet you. And
absolutely,
that's the cool thing about this too. You potentially gain new friends by just having, because this type of a conversation doesn't just happen all the time. People have to make space for it. And in your everyday life, if we had just met in passing at a bar, they'd be like, oh yeah, I used to play in a band. I do a podcast. Cool. I play in a band. I just started a podcast. Cool. All right, man. Nice to meet you. Like that doesn't happen. So it's holding space, Yeah. And that's another thing that's beautiful about it. So yeah, I look forward to someday hopefully meeting you, man. And absolutely. This was a pleasure, a great pleasure. Awesome. I really enjoyed it.
That's my greatest anxiety of this show is that I don't waste someone's time. If it sucks, I wouldn't put it out. It's no big deal. But if I waste an hour and a half of your time, then I feel really bad. And that's where I get nervous, is only for that fact, because it's basic human interaction. But if I've wasted your time, that's the fear. So I'm glad it was mutually beneficial. And I would absolutely love to hang, in the future when you get through town, or I'll shoot you an email after this with my contact information. And I would love to keep in touch and do this again. And we can go to some other realms. There's so much we didn't even talk about. And I love that, because there's still like a vast amount to talk about later, which is awesome.
And maybe I steal you to have on my podcast. We'll see what happens.
Anytime, man. You just let me know. All right.
All right, brother. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day. Yeah, you're behind me. Good rest of the day, my friend.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All right, bye.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage and Times of Grace. Go check out Times of Grace new record. Killswitch just did a live stream, which I think ends tonight. I'm doing this on Sunday. So you guys probably already missed it if you didn't see it already, but there's always time to, maybe they'll let you watch it again. I don't know how those live streams work. If you can go buy tickets later, or if your ticket lasts a certain amount of time, not a big deal, but, I hear it was great. So go check it out. And big thanks to Jesse for coming on. He'll definitely be on for a part 2 in the future, as we had a great conversation. I was really stoked on it. So thank you guys so much for coming back week after week. We've got a ton of big stuff in the works. We got a bunch of stuff in the can already. We've got some pretty huge stuff coming up August and September. And then the anniversary, the 5th year anniversary, is going to be in October. And that one is going to be amazing. I'll tell you right now, it's going to be awesome. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So go check out the Facebook group, the Peer Pleasure Podcast Inner Circle. Go check out the premium service, peerpleasure.supportingcast.fm. Sign up for that. Get the ad-free feed, the video footage, all that stuff, the past cast. We're always putting new stuff up in there. The day I do an interview, that it goes up right away. So I've got 3 interviews this week. That's not to say it could go up to 6, which it has before, but 3 so far this week, and all those videos will be up this week in the premium, and you won't have to wait a month or so for the episode to come out. So definitely worth your time. Thank you guys so much for coming back week after week. I love each and every one of you guys. I say it every week. I mean it. I really do. I do these intro outros on the fly. I don't write them down. I don't have a script. It's just me talking to you, and I really, really appreciate your listenership and supporting the show. The numbers have been growing exponentially every month. It's insane. Keep that going. I know we got a lot of sponsors and ads slipping in here, and that helps keep the lights on. We need those to get paid to actually keep all this stuff hosted, all the stuff doing the graphics that all costs. I have to pay for Adobe Photoshop, licensing, all sorts of shit goes into this thing, and financially. So you're hearing those ads. You don't want to hear them anymore. Join the premium. The lowest tier of that gets you the ad-free feed, and you can listen to it without all those ads, talking about manscaping and all that in the middle of your interview. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to get out of here. We'll see you on the radio.